I would like to invite the next speaker. Actually, I'm very happy to invite the next speaker, who is Ana Mineiro. Okay, so Ana is an associate professor at the Catholic University of Portugal. She specializes in sign languages, and she has written extensively on sign linguistics. She has been a principal investigator in many research projects, including those funded by European Union. And here I would like to highlight one project, the Project Without Barriers, which aimed at creating conditions for establishing a new sign language in Sao Tome and Principe. And the research that grows out of this project documents the very early stages of the emergence of a sign language. And in this respect, it differs from studies into other emerging sign languages, such as Al-Said Bedouin or the Nicaraguan Sign Language, which generally lack such data. So this fascinating research documents the role of pantomime in sign creation, and we look forward to hearing all about this in the talk, what pantomime can tell us about emergent signs of a newborn language.
Good morning, all of you. I will begin by thanking the organizers of the Center for Language Evolution Studies and you, Jerome, for inviting me to this talk and the Polish National Center for funding it. I especially thank Przemek, Sławomir, Johan, Marek, and Monica, and hope not to forget anyone. It's a great honor to be here amongst so recognized specialists, and I hope my talk will not bore you.
If you could speak
louder.
Yeah,
yes,
a little bit.
I'll try. It's like my voice is not in perfect shape. I have to say that it's quite intimidating to be amongst the great researchers in this area. A colleague of mine yesterday was sending me a message saying that she was proud that I was swimming with the sharks. So here I am between the sharks, and thank you for the opportunity for swimming with you. I would also like to particularly address my thanks to Sławomir, because if it wasn't for him, I would probably not be here. And I can explain it. In 2019, at Proto-Lang Symposium in Lisbon, I was giving a talk on emotional and cognitive processes in communication in humans and other primates, when at the end of the talk, Sławomir told me that what I was showing in my slides were not simply gestures versus signs, but there was a great deal of pantomime. So that was my kickoff to rethink my research on emergent sign language and be here today. Never before that I was interested in pantomime, I have to say. Because as a linguist, and yesterday I think, Jordan, we were talking about that, we should present ourselves. I'm a linguist. And I was looking for newborn signs, emergent signs, not pantomime, not really pantomime. So the observation led me to go and see the symposium on pantomime by the Polish group in Proto-Lang and have a step back in my data and look with another lens to the communication process before proto-science, before science, established science. So I really owe my interests in pantomime to the Polish group working at the Center of Language Evolution Studies. Thank you very much for that too. So here we are. Just a little framework, brief notes on language genesis. All of you know about this, but just to framework. The beginning of language in humans, for me, is triggered by the necessity of communication to cooperate, and that's Tomazello's work. When there is no settled language in common, even in modern humans, bodily mimesis and its core component, pantomime, is used. So in this sense, we might consider pantomime as a language fossil in language evolution, and that's a proposal by Zivensky et al. In 2021, as when there is no common language, humans communicate via bodily mimesis and use pantomime. Bodily mimesis engenders non-linguistic communication by using the body as a tool for intentionally transferring referential propositional information. It implies motivated signs to establish the connection between their pre-established meaning and their expressions. It's also a perfect fit with Michael's theory, and which argues that the roots, mirror neuron hypothesis, which argues that the roots of speech are integrated in a unique communicative system composed by sounds, facial expression, and manual gestures. 3 points are favoring, in this sense, this perspective. When there is language loss or impairment, people rely or can rely on pantomime to communicate. This was pointed today also. And when there is no language in common, sign or vocal, when traveling, charades, whatever, people also rely on pantomime to communicate. And I think, and I can quite be sure about that, there is a first stage of pantomime that occurs in sign language emergence. And that's a question that Wendy Sandler does not agree. It's her paper, Vive la différence in cognition, and she was trying to say that the mirror neuron hypothesis is very nice, but she didn't find pantomime in her findings. So I'm a little bit against that, and later in this talk I will just talk about it. The truth is, in our research at São Tomé and Príncipe Sign Language, we found a pantomimic stage before linguistic complexity arose, although the same results were not presented in the Sandler's papers. We found that the first generation of Al-Said Bedouin sign languages users use only the hands to convey words, with the rest of the body uninvolved linguistically, and use occasionally the whole body pantomimic expressions only for dramatic purposes, not for signing. So my next slides will be devoted to summarize the roots or the beginning of a newborn language, of an emergent language, from pantomime to proto-signs and first signs. I'm not sure if I'm abusive in using the word proto-signs, but I really love it. Michael, where are you? Somewhere. I really do love the word proto-signs, and I think it exemplifies the first signs in a new sign language. So I will detail the roots and aspects of language emergence step by step, with key findings in 4 recent previously published studies. For pantomime, it's a very broad definition, but it's an operative one. I am meaning an iconic gesturing involving the whole body, where there is no speech or no established sign language. And for proto-sign, I will mean that's the very first sign with some linguistic characteristics after pantomime. So, how did I get all this data? From a project entitled Sem Barreiras, Without Barriers, With No Borders, and this project was integrated in a bigger one, a medical one, on hearing problems at São Tomé and Príncipe, and they discover that there is a high percentage of deaf people there. It's not because of malaria, but it's because of the meds people take when they are expecting a child and they have malaria. So there's a kind of 5% of deaf, which is a high percentage. So our project was these deaf kids wouldn't go to school, they were isolated and deprived from communication, and it was really heartbreaking, and our project was to promote the emergence of a new sign language among them by gathering them together, and to provide access to education to this deaf community and give a kick-off on this. So, our timeline project was from February 2013 to February 2015 in a common space at São Tomé and Príncipe. Not the island of Príncipe, but the island of São Tomé. The participants were around 100, 80% of female and 2% male, aged between 4 and 24. So it's a good range of ages. The sessions were all video recorded with 2 cameras, and each have a kind of 400 hours of videos for this project. And the method was a deaf researcher, oriented by us, elicit signs through cards. We were drawing specific cards by local artists so the deaf could recognize the cultural draw. Of simple objects, animal, everyday items, whatever, and later on she elicits, when the signs kind of 3 to 4 months after that, she elicits signs based on narratives, okay, based on narratives with sequential drawings. So I will show you first steps in class. It's very interesting to assist, to see the first signs that emerge in a classroom. She was showing 3 cards: pencil sharpener, dog, and goat. And you will see how it works. She's showing pencil sharpener. There's one bold guy, and he begins, and the others imitate him. So they are really happy because they are all together, and finally they can see that they are not the only deaf on the island. Dog and goat. See, all body involvement in that. Yeah. So, what are the 4 studies pre-published? They're not chronological, in a chronological order. Why? Because as a linguist, I presented myself before, I was interested in science, in conventionalized science. So I began in 2017 saying that there was systematiicities, that there is a phonological parameters, whatever. So when I stepped back, because of you, I just was looking for pantomime, and this is the first paper on pantomime. So disentangling pantomime from early sign in a new sign language is published in Frontiers, and I guess you have this in your workshop documents. So I will talk about this study, and then we got a spin-off this study, which is published International Journal of Psychology and Neuroscience. It's on press, and because of neuroefficiency, and I'll talk about it later. And then this year in April, I was doing a paper for a Portuguese linguistic journal about word order, word constituents in São Tomé and Príncipe. I did the pilot. And then the 4 studies, obviously the first in chronological order, it's about emerging linguistic features of São Tomé and Príncipe Sign Language, and it's published in Sign Language and Linguistics in John Benjamin's. So, our first study. You have it in the Congress, in the seminar papers, but what is striking is that we observed 1,000 pantomimic gestures and sign over the 4 stages, 2 years of data collection. And how did I divide the phases? With 6 months of interval in each phase. So February 2013 to February 2015 with 6 months of interval in each phase. And what did we see? What did we see? We see pantomime in the beginning was overwhelming in February 2013, but it decreases, as you can see with the graph, in February 2015. So it's pantomime decreases and signs increase. Why? Michael explained that before. I'm not going to be there again, but it's not practical and it's not open-ended. I mean, you just can have pantomime to communicate in everyday communication because it's heavy. So, when I'm talking about pantomime and science, it's things like that. It's only 3 examples. You have the first column, the second column, the third one. Because you've seen goat, I just put 3 columns. But you have bicycle involving the whole body, legs, trunk, head, everything, and then it came like here, bicycle, just this. Football, the same. You got involvement of the legs, and interesting, this second sign, the second gesture, football, was also found in Israeli Sign Language by Irit Meyer and Wendy Sandler. She found exactly the same evolution. And then goat, you just saw it. You just involved all the body, and then it came here, and then one drop of the hands, and just like this. Well, I have to say that the deaf person at São Tomé e Príncipe who was implementing the project with me, she did not speak Portuguese Sign Language, okay? She was forbidden from the beginning to teach Portuguese Sign Language. She was trying to elicit from them and not to teach anything. Although, eventually, there is some kind of gestures that they might borrow from her communication, okay? So, we can see pantomime in the first stage, in the first 6 months, and then communication in phase 3. That's phase 1. This guy was looking for a film on basketballs, and he was describing, because every Monday they describe what they have been doing during the weekend. So I run a lot, and then I get a ball, and there it is. So I think everyone catches this. It's really pantomime. And that's what Slavomir told me. Your videos are pantomime. This is not gestures. It's not only gestures. It's really pantomime. That's true. That's more conventionalized science. Phase 3. He's talking about his family. He's saying, stop. That's my brother. He's like that. He's like that. He's a little bit taller, and the other one even taller, and the fourth one even taller, and then the last one is a baby. So obviously he's signing, okay? So to summarize our study, and you can see also kind of photos here. In the first photo, it's me was talking with this student was there. He was ill. He was at the hospital, and you see his mother is not paying any attention, and that's when these people went to our project. It was like that. They were deprived of communication. It was really heartbreaking, and he's happy to talk with me, but he was, that's a photo of him saying, I haven't had any sleep tonight because I was in pain. And that's pantomime phases. And then that's sign phases when she's signing the rubber sign, and then it's in 2021 because we went this year, and this for rubber went this because it's more efficient also, okay? That's... Well, so what did this study showed us? It showed us prior to having a structured linguistic system, people communicate through pantomime, and this communication lasted for 2 years and was substantially reduced after 1 year. So it was a decrease when agreed proto-signs began to appear in the community, solving this problem of communication. in the more economical way in terms of articulation and in terms of efficiency. But as Michael stated before, it's not efficient to do pantomime to communicate in every day. So, and it's limited. There is no disruption between pantomimes and proto-signs in our data. It goes smoothly, and they fell onto a continue during the emergence of a sign language. That's the more striking is it's very quick. Okay. So we had a little bit. With our paper on frontiers, we were thinking that we could explore more questions of neural efficiency, and we went to do this. It's Ana Maria Abreu, the one who was talking to me and saying that I was with sharks. And she's a psychologist and neuroscientist, and we were looking for signing space, body movement, and involvement of hands and body articulators. So for this study, we have a different methodology. We will only focus on the cards. You see the cards, they elicit the signs. It's for examples of it. Airplane, to beat, and goat, and snake, and we presented these cards and elicited the signs. So we were focused on that, and to observe how pantomimic gestures and signs for these 100 cards, which were in 280, but we only use for this study 100, and regarding signing space, body movement, and involvement. And from our observations, we see a decrease of all non-manual articulators. As you can see in the graph, head, legs, torso, mouth don't drop completely, but they decrease a lot face to face. Bimanuality maintains a certain prevalence. Signs are articulated, gestures and signs are articulated with both hands, but it decreases also. So, bimanual gesturing decreases across time. However, the steepest decreases observed are in non-manual areas such as body, legs, torso, head, indicating a transition from pantomime to sign. A slight decrease also occurred in the frequency of mouth use across the time, the mouthing, and together the data showed that manual and non-manual gestures decrease with time, indicating that gestures become more efficient and physical, more economical. And pantomime decreases, proto-signs emerge, and we are on phase 3 and 4. So, just to show you phase 3, a video. He was 4 when the project began. Boat, bicycle, still the 2 legs, but not all of it. And rain. And it's now quite universal sign, which is home. Well, it's house, really, but it's home also. So, that's the 4th phase. He's telling that for eating fish, he has to fish it. But he just uses this. He's not involving all his body. And that's phase 4, okay? So, our study 2 shows how the range of gestures, as well as the use of hands, face, and body required by pantomime is reduced over time. And it's because of neural complexity and neural system efficiency, because when it's not possible to pantomime all over the time. So in terms of communication, when a more structured linguistic system appears, pantomime begins to be residual. And I think that's good for your hypothesis for the Polish group, because I think it's really could be a kind of language for sign, okay? Well, the other study I did in April this year was about word order, word constituent order. As you all know, research on language evolution has also focused on the issue of natural world order, well, several studies have inspired this discussion, especially with sign language. And there is a seminal study by Susan Golden Meadow and colleagues in 2008. And then following this study, new evidence emerged from the work of Gibson, 2013, who used a paradigm through events reversible and non-reversible. And we use his paradigm to do a pilot study. I know it's not too much because we did only 10 sentences. April this year I was really tired, I could not think much. But science is always something I really love it. I'm always in love with science, so I really wanted to do this study. So I got a small corpus, small is beautiful, and with 10 sentences of each phase with reversible and not reversible events. And I had some interesting results, although I cannot generalize, about reversible and irreversible events. They were all done by gloss. I just glossed them. For phase 1, bread mother gives boy. For reversible, and phase 4 for reversible 2, Amarildo kiss Juliet, and irreversible fish eye cell, and safu, which is a tropical fruit, tastes sweet. So. We initially had hypotheses that in initial pantomime communication phase, the order for irreversible would be subject, object, verb. In the case of reversible events, the order would be SVO. However, we found that the sub-order only appeared in the last phase, phase 4, for reversible events, and did not occur in our corpus in the first phase for either reversible or irreversible events. For reversible events, in phase 1, there was a trend towards the use of SVO order. The overall percentage of SVO order uses decrease in phase 4 to 50%, but still retain predominance over the other word orders. This trend is described in literature, and it's confirmed by the data collected indicating the possible natural word order in this case. For irreversible events, phase 1 showed the predominant order of OSV. However, the percentage of OSV order use dropped to 20% by phase 4, with SVO taking precedence 80% in this phase. So, what can we summarize on this study? That the grammatical characteristics of the first type of communication amongst this population are also altered when the use of pantomime decreases. Okay? So study 3 shows us that the first phase of sign language emergence, which is primarily comprised of pantomime use, the order of reversible and reversible events are formed of syntactic orders with a great degree of freedom. Regarding the order of constituents. The same is not true for the fourth phase of sign language emergence, when linguistic characteristics begin to appear. In this last phase, syntax becomes more rigid with regards with constituent orders. Again, pantomime communication in an early phase of language emergence can be looked at a fossil of language. So, here was the first study we did after coming from São Tomé, and we were looking especially for the last column. I already show you these 3 figures, and we were looking especially for the last column. So, early signs in São Tomé and Príncipe Sign Language follow the same parameters. When there is a systematicity arising, and they use manual configuration, orientation, finger selection, movement, location, use of manual articulators, and dominant hands also. No configurations and no location observed is particularly prevalent, and many signs are performed with both articulators. In the first stage, the location was articulated with no limited area, so they had a large signing space. The signs could be performed anywhere in the space area around the signer's body, and some of the signs were anchored to certain body parts, such as the legs, stomach, and above the head. Then, as studies 1 and 2 were able to demonstrate, the whole body commitment dropped off, and a more economical two-handed linguistic system emerged. So the first phonological production also demonstrated a substantial involvement of other elements of the body, such arms, shoulders, back, legs, stomach, and face. This pattern was similarly found in Israeli, not Al-Said, but Israeli Sign Language by Irit Meyer and Sandler. Okay? So, regarding morphology, we hypothesize there that there might exist a tendency for compounding, kind of banana tree is tree plus banana, or girl is woman plus child. And other emerging sign language and paper on Aronoff and colleagues also demonstrate this kind of tendency. Inflection morphology was not found. That's not surprising, given it's still a very basic developing language. And this finding is in accordance with reports on other emergent languages. The use of personal pronouns is one of the first steps in language acquisition, as Paulo Marantet knows very well, and we all know, in deaf children, and they are only acquired very early. Thus, they were acquired also very early in our data. And also the thing that pointing is as personal pronouns in LGBT, in the São Tomé and Príncipe Sign Language have a baseline of pointing, which is just like other sign language and the studies of Laura and Petito. So, study 4 shows us mainly phonologic and morphological tendencies of the first signs that are in a phase of insertion in a linguistic system and exhibit characteristics inherent to it, namely articulatory concentration in the manual articulators, the visible fall, it's slight, but it does, of the hand too, as well as progressive loss of the non-manual articulators such as trunk, head and legs were coming from pantomime gestures. In morphological terms, there is a trend towards the composition of gestures based on already existing gestures. That's a very economical process of languages, of course, and these proto-signs trends remind us a past that began in pantomime and was born from it. So, following the evidence, we might ask, I was not asking that, but the Polish group were, is pantomime the fossil of language? And you were arguing that it might be. And I think clearly pantomime seems to be a stage that precedes the proto-sign in a new sign language. And that's very clear to me now. And regarding this argument, what I have to say, it's Sandler's paper, Vive la différence, and she was reflecting on Michael Arbib's mirror neuron theory hypothesis. She was saying that, well, that's a very nice theory, but attention, it does not happen in an emergent sign language. And I think it's, maybe it's a question of method she uses, and maybe we should place these findings in time. Because maybe she was not looking directly for what precedes the sign. She was looking into signs, like I was, because we are linguists and we are obsessed with signs. And just forget that it's a pre-communication coming previous to established signs. So maybe it's that, or maybe it's, I know she's a generativist, and for generativists 1 is enough, but I think 1 is not enough. It's not, we cannot have a full picture of an emergence of a language by showing a single video. It's, for me, it's, I'm sorry, I do love Wendy Sandler. She's an excellent person and more excellent scientist, but I don't think that's enough. enough. I would say it's not enough. So, well, maybe it's a method. So, we thus hypothesize that language emergence is followed by a pantomimic stage, and that represents a language fossil in terms of language evolution, following the proposal of Zivensky. And I think this can help with your with your theory, with your argument. And also, I have to say that this theory complements those of Emery in her paper. It's a wonderful paper on 2011, in which they found that the production of pantomime language rely on partial distinct neural systems in the brain. So, I would like to add that in evolutionary terms, it makes me sense that gestures and vocal neural substrates co-evolve together. Maybe a gesture was precedent. I believe so. I do like a lot of Michael Arbib and Michael Corvallis statements on that and theories on that. But, you know, when our ancestors put the food on their mouth, it's very neurobiological, it's very refined. So, because if not, we couldn't have fingers, it would be bite. So, I think it's interesting to see that all these systems which are not primarily for language, were primarily for other functions for survival, but they were refined from the beginning. So, in brief, we think Arbib's evolutionary chain of mirror systems, simple imitation, complex imitation, pantomime, proto-sign, proto-speech, language-ready brain is a very probable scenario for language emergence in humans, and this also places, in my perspective, pantomime as a language fossil. So, what are we doing now? We were curious about iconicity in the science. And we are with a paper under revision to languages and trying to investigate the evolution of emerging iconic signs in order to disclose the emergence of a phonological system in an emergent sign language. And we collected, so it's a comparison between time 0 in 2013 with this data and now, and time now, which is time 1, which is now in 2021. So we collected exactly the same items through the cards that I showed you before, and which were also present in the first dictionary of São Tomé and Príncipe Sign Language. So, we identified iconicity in 200 signs, not in 280, but in 200, in two different moments, time 0 and time 1, with 8 years of interval. I can say that, I have to say that 8 years it's not much for a language, but still it has passed some time over the first video recordings. So also discrete, the number of iconic signs were in a decrease, time 0 to time 1. We were doing this with the following pattern scheme of iconic strategy, of handling strategy, that's a mango, and instrument strategy, peeling a carrot, and object strategy, a shell, and we were following her and coding the signs according to their semantic nature into 4 categories: living beings, object, things, actions, and others. So, although we can find slight alterations, the iconic strategy distributions remain very similar to time 0 to time 1, so signs are still very iconic. But I think they are iconic in all sign language over the world. I mean, they are arbitrary, that's true, but they are also iconic, so it's not very surprising, with main changes in strategy occurring for the actions in semantic category. We also found an association between the hands, there's also discrete number of hands, 1 or 2, decreases from time 0 to time 1, and we have seen this before also in the data of 2013 to 2015. So, thank you very much. I hope you have questions.
Thank you, Anna, for showing us and sharing us with this fascinating material and fascinating project in itself. So the floor is open to questions.
Thank you, Anna. What a beautiful series of studies. This is really lovely work. I want to see this paper under review before. But, my question is, because you had such a lovely age range between 2 and 24, I'm wondering if perhaps in this new analysis you're doing, you noticed that the children who were younger at time 0 are doing something different at time 1 compared to the older, the 18 to 24-year-olds at times 0 and time 1.
Yeah. We thought about that also. Because of language acquisition, it's really different. A small child from an adult, or juveniles, but we just elicit, impaired, we were careful about that because it might be a thing, to distort the data. So it was the children with 6 or 7 were impaired with 6 or 7 when eliciting time 0 to time 1. So just to avoid this kind of biases. So thank you for your observation.
And in the educational context, were the children in communication across age groups, or really they only met within their age group? Like, is this becoming a sign language?
I'm sorry, it's so, can you speak a little bit louder?
Yes, I will try. I think the mic isn't a mic. You said that, somebody.
Yeah, sorry, the microphones are for the Zoom people, really,
Okay.
so we're trying to do something about it. But,
Sorry if I'm yelling at the Zoom people, but I'm now going to bellow. How much is this new sign language being used in the community?
No.
Yes.
8 years after.
Yes.
It's used in school and it's used in the community. They have an association now for deaf people and they all attend because it's very important for their cultural establishment and they can see peers, it's important for them. And in schools, so they have, the school is directed, the girls they are learning through sign language. That was our second project, educational one, which was about that. So they have contact,
Within the group.
Yeah.
Thank you again so much.
Thank you.
Obrigado. That was great. Just 2 questions. One, have you made any videos of conversations to see what happens as we get something a bit like a narrative, a conversation emerging? And secondly, within that, I was fascinated by your particular idea that the language for the syntax for reversible versus irreversible events emerge somewhat differently. So I wonder if you could sort of package those 2 questions into one answer.
Yeah, I'll try to. Well, narratives, yes. We filmed narratives in the beginning, 2013, and now 2013 to 2015, and then now in 2021 we just filmed some narratives too. I haven't been looking into this data because it's very recent. He went to Saint Tomé in June or whatever, and I was just looking for illicit signs for the cards. But we have also some recording about narratives. Regarding syntax, evolutionary syntax, I was only looking for data from 2013 to 2015, and I was looking for narratives. We just, with Ella, you just transcribe and annotate and do it. So these data were from Ella. What I can say about that is I cannot generalize. It would be very bold of me to say it's this way. I think it's a pilot study, and it has the importance of a pilot study. But I think it will be nice to get more deep on this and to have a stronger and robust corpus to see if this tendency maintains or not, because it's different from the literature, yes. I don't know if I answered your question, but it's okay. Thank you.
Thanks a lot. Just really great stuff. I was wondering about the kind of differences between this sign language and ABSL in terms of the community factors and the community structure. And whether that might be a reason for another kind of potential explanation why there's differences, especially like with pantomime. And I was thinking especially about common ground, because like in ABSL it was like families, structures, and there was kind of, was built out of home sign systems, whereas you kind of brought a lot of people together who didn't have common ground, and like much less like shared interaction history. And I was wondering if that might be a reason that you see different strategies, because in your case kind of it was really from the ground up without a lot of common ground and a shared interaction history.
Thank you for your question. Very interesting. Well, you're right. I think this sign language is more like Nicaraguan sign language. They gather all deaf together and a language was born. Here too, ABSL, it's a village sign language. They are all, the founders were deaf, there were generations of deaf and so on. So it might be a difference, I don't know. I never thought about that, that's interesting. Here they were quite isolated and they were in a very emotional need of communicate. These kids were not so happy when they were together, so they had this need, well, I have to tell you a story, I have to, it's me, it's you, we are similar, because they didn't know each other before, so it was striking in that maybe it's because of it's not a village sign language but a school sign language. I don't know, but now it's a village. Well, not a village, but it's a community because they are all together. I don't know if the difference are from that or no, or pantomime. I cannot answer that, but I will think about it. Next paper. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I admit I didn't do my homework and read your papers before the workshop, but I will. You have made me a fan. I mean it. Kind of building up on this issue about your work and Sandler, apart from the possible actual differences in these two emerging languages, I'm wondering if there could not be a definitional issue. Namely the elephant in the room, pantomime. I mean, I remember Sandler's data, one of her first cohort, he was killing, he was using, and also your emphasis on a quote from your talk, no disruption between pantomime and proto-science, they fell into a continuum. This reminds me of what I wrote the paper with Przemek and Slavik in Evolution of Language, where we emphasize exactly this continuum between more pantomimic and less pantomimic. Yeah. More of the body, less of the body. So if we're not kind of super strict and take the classical definition of pantomime, the whole body, not but rather partially, wouldn't you say that, yes, Sandler's work, they're more pantomimic in the initial stage and less so later?
I think she's also going in the view that some of, Michael was talking this morning about that, eyebrows, facial expression, that could be pantomime. For Sandler, it's not. And she's relying on some kind of scientific reports on that. That's grammar, you know. The brain processes eyebrows and facial expression with the left hemisphere when it's grammar. When it's not grammar, it processes with the right hemisphere. So she's relying a little bit on that and saying that's grammar. That's not, you know, that's not other things. Yeah. So maybe it's a problem of definition. Yeah. I believe so.
And theoretical bias, as you implied, also different. And second, kind of related to that is the fossil metaphor, right? That you're building on the 21 paper. I mean, of course, it's in one way we can see them as fossil, but isn't it a constraint on the fossil metaphor because we only see them as belonging to the evolution? But don't these kind of pantomimic gestures continue to exist in all present sign languages? People call them different things, like constructed actions. The Paris school calls them, if I remember, grand iconicité, right?
Classifiers.
Yes, but I mean, not even just classifiers. I mean, sometimes imagine the Sylvester and Twinny, you know, the person stands up and does like that, and the Sylvester hits the wall. So, la grande iconicité and by Cusack and other. I mean, don't these kind of pantomimes continue to be there when we need to extend or be more expressive in using a sign language?
I believe you're right, because I've been with deaf for now almost 20 years, and really they do pantomime. They still do pantomime with a language, with an established language like Portuguese Sign Language, which has 200 years. Yeah. So they sometimes when they do narrative stories, you know, they just use it. And for pedagogical purposes also. So yes. So yes.
Thank you.
Just one comment. How about living fossils?
How about
living fossils? Living fossils.
Living fossils. Yeah, I might think it's a living fossil. Pantomime could be a living fossil, yeah. I might think so. So you can string your hypothesis with data from an emergent sign language. And I'm happy to share the videos with you.
Okay, so perhaps just a follow-up. I'm not going to talk about living fossils, although I was responsible for the term, but it's about Wendy Sandler's work. I think it may also be the data problem, because from what I know, like from a paper on dedicated gesture, they don't have many recordings from the first cohort. So I guess these come from 1960s, and there are, you know, a few photos and I guess a few films. But what we see here are very much pantomimic gestures, like they are full body. It's only just like Wendy Sandler is not interested in that. So I guess it's both availability of data and certain, as you said, as certain theoretical focus that or approach.
I guess so. Nevertheless, her work is wonderful, but you know, yeah.
Definitely.
So, no more questions? No Zoom questions? No? Okay, so thank you again very much, and it's been an honor to be with you.
Thank you, Anna. So it's lunch break. We are sort of planning to treat you to different culinary experiences, and we start with students' cafeteria. It may be interesting. So please follow Marta. It's downstairs, but and we try to begin at 1. Yeah.